Genocide by law. How did the South African Aboriginal people declared colored, lose their land and resource rights? Since 1958, the nationalist apartheid government applied what is called an Alienation Act, to keep control of the Aboriginal people declared colored's land rights, fishing rights, forestry rights, mining rights, agriculture rights, and airspace rights. How did they do this? Let us explore and simplify for our people the meaning and function of politician-driven alienation acts. Welcome to the South African Aboriginal Congress, and we are not a political party. The nationalist apartheid government, the nationalist ANC-led government and traditional leaders, has been working together to design, create, and implement policy-driven alienation acts created by politicians, that allows these illegally elected governments and traditional leaders, to convert the resources of the Aboriginal people to a monetary system where the Aboriginal people declared colored, are primarily excluded from. The nationalist government started this implementation in 1958, by using the Missionary Stations Act 9 of 1911, to maintain administration over the colored people's trust land and resource rights. Nationalist governments have also illegally tried to disband the South African Cape Corps, the Aboriginal People's Statutory Defence Force, and they failed, because due to them being non-statutory entities, which does not have the authority to disband a statutory body. The South African Cape Corps stands steady till today. Nationalist government's attempt at watering down the South African Cape Corps to forums, associations, and war veterans and thus far, was unsuccessful to deceive the South African Cape Corps members. We will unpack the South African Cape Corps in another video. Let me fast forward to Act 9 of 1987, which makes it clearer that the political machinery went into overdrive as this act sought to repeal the Colored Persons Communal Reserves Land Trust Act 3 of 1961. This could only be done with a few of the colored's own people deceiving them, by illegally signing off without consent, the colored people's administration to their trust land and resource rights. This was done through the House of Representatives or the Department of Colored Affairs, as accomplices with the nationalist apartheid government. The same National Party colored representatives, did not mention a word of the trust administration to their own people. The Nationalists' Party colored representatives were well looked after and their families, always had a few nice houses, and they got paid well for the deception, and the colored ANC members are repeating the history today. Some of the few key role players who made agreements with the Afrikaner nationalists, on behalf of the colored people to alienate them from their trust and all its benefits are notably, Tom Swartz, Sonny Leon, Alethea Jansen, Peter Murray, and Cecil Herendeen and others. Some of them till this day is still in politics, moving from political party, to political party by ensuring the alienation acts and nationalist agenda is maintained. Why do these nationalist colored representatives deceive their own colored people? So they can guarantee themselves, and their families to live well. Some of the same colored affairs or House of Representative leaders, are currently claiming traditional status, as a means of positioning themselves again, in their constituencies. This is a grave tragedy, because this means they want to give the colored persons trust administration to the same nationalist politicians again, and this time, they are posing not as colored representatives, but as politicized traditional leaders. The Trunka Act is designed and geared to hand all the colored people's land and resource rights, over to traditional leaders and the newly popping up politically driven traditional authorities. The nationalist agenda has just moved from white, to black, and now to traditional. It remains a nationalist agenda nonetheless. Beware of traditional leadership and the new fad, traditional parliament, or authorities, as this is a serious warning. The North, East, and West Africa tribal traditional leaders that settled here as Xhosa and Zulu amongst others, also gave the rights to the Aboriginal people's land they occupied to historical and present political parties and politicians. Their own people are yet to understand this and hold them to account. Come 1998, under huge international pressure for the return of the Aboriginal people declared colored trust administration, the apartheid nationalist government, the nationalist ANC-led government and traditional leaders came together and created the most brazen Alienation Act this country has seen in its history. This was called the Transformation of Certain Rural Areas Act, or Act 94 of 1998, also known as the Trunkar Act. This act was judged unconstitutional and illegal in 2018, but is still ruthlessly applied by municipalities across the country, with devastating consequences to the colored people. Most notably in the different Cape provinces, where the colored people already fled due to historical dispossession of the rest of their land, now known as homeland.